The moment had finally come, and a strange mixture of unease, grim curiosity, and foreboding fluttered in Marcus's chest. His ID's magic flared to life, and a moment later, the Minotaur found himself in the teleportation center. Just as he anticipated, Karen sat behind the console. Her face became bathed in dark storm grays, pale blues, and an odd cocoa brown color. Marcus winced as he moved up to her, and Karen averted her face from him. He sighed and started to move away.
Wait.
Marcus stopped and looked back at her. The young woman had shifted in her seat so she could face him. The colors maintained their odd, stormy-like hues.
I'm so sorry.
The grays, the blues, and the browns grew more vibrant.
I can't believe this happened. It's my fault. I should have never told you about Brad.
Marcus stepped up to her.
Hey, it's not your fault. I made the decision to throw a couch at him. It's my fault, but I don't regret anything.
But you lost an eye!
Marcus shrugged.
It's just an eye. I plan to save a little from each paycheck until I can afford to restore it, and until then I'll rock out this patch.
Karen shifted in her seat a little.
I'll help too. It's still my fault. I don't care what you say. I feel so bad about this.
Don't. And I won't accept any money from you. If my mom's taught me anything, it's that when you throw a couch at someone's face, you take responsibility for it, and accept the consequences. The bright side is that Brad has been suspended for a really long time.
Karen lowered her head a little, and smatterings of red thundered across her face.
I wish he would have been fired. Or killed. I hate him so much.
Marcus just shrugged.
Yeah, I'm sorry that's not the case. I tried.
Oh well.
The cocoa-colored browns faded and were replaced by traces of greens and yellows.
Thank you for doing what you did. It means a lot. You really are a super sweet guy.
Marcus grinned.
Thanks. I better go see Andrew. Have a good day.
For a brief moment, greens and yellows dominated her black interior, and she just waved. It didn't take long for Marcus to make it to the offices. When he walked in, the pair of administrative assistants, who were engaged in conversation, stopped talking and gave him wide-eyed looks. One of them was a sort of bird creature with a long neck, pink feathers, and 3 eyes above a gray beak. The other administrative assistant was a bare-chested ogre with blue skin, a pair of small horns jutting from his blue hair, and a pair of red eyes. The ogre touched a small floating crystal on his desk.
Mr. Andrew, Marcus is here.
A few moments later, Andrew floated out from one of the back offices, smoking one of his cigars. A thick plume of black smoke wafted off of the burning end.
Hey, Patsy, how you feeling today?
Marcus narrowed his eye.
Patchy? Oh, come on, please don't do that.
Don't be a spoil sport, Patsy. It's all good fun. We all get nicknames around here. You just earned one early, it's all. You ready to get back to it then, eh?
I suppose so.
Great. Go check the map. I'm pairing you up with Lars and Jeb today. Try not to kill these two, Patsy.
He started to laugh for a brief moment, and then gave Marcus a long, uninterrupted stare.
But seriously, don't.
Marcus nodded.
Right.
He went to the map in the hall and searched for where Lars and Jeb were listed. They were stationed in a room that was quite close to the front entrance of the dungeon today. Marcus moved through the halls, climbed to the stairs to reach the dungeon floor, and then made his way to the room. After a while, a soft voice called out to him from one of the chamber doorways.
There he is.
Marcus turned around and then grinned from ear to ear. Nina leaned in the doorway to her chamber, which looked the same way it usually did, 11 puppets leaned against one side of the room, and there was a large burgundy magic trunk on the opposite side.
Hey, Nina. How's it going?
Look at you, trying to be all nonchalant.
Nina shook her head and stepped up to him. She grinned.
That patch is quite dashing.
Marcus reached up and touched it tenderly.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, I think it adds a nice touch to the already intimidating exterior. Everyone's talking about it, you know. How you fought 5 other dudes and killed all but one of them. It's impressive.
Thanks.
So why'd you do it anyway? No one's quite clear as to why, only that you went berserk.
Marcus winced.
I didn't go berserk. I had a good reason. Brad was harassing one of our coworkers, and so I got...
Nina arched an eyebrow.
Went berserk?
A bit of humor dripped from her lips.
Wow. Okay, I went berserk.
That's too bad about the coworker, though.
She turned to go back into her chamber.
Brad was always such a jackass, but I didn't know that that was going on.
She moved back into her chamber.
Have a nice day.
Marcus watched her disappear and then moved toward the room where he would be working today. He came to a large room that resembled a treasure chamber. There was only one entrance, and so Marcus stood in the doorway. The room had dark purple carpeted floors, light cream-colored walls, and an elegant ceiling with various kinds of geometric shapes and patterns on it. A large painting of a fair maiden was on the far side of the room. The maiden looked to be human, and she had dark brown hair, styled in the form of a pixie cut, a pair of green eyes, and she wore an elegant dress. A massive golden and red treasure chest sat just below the painting. The wood of the treasure box was painted red, and the box frames were outlined in golden metal. 2 rows of empty suits of black-colored knight armor stood before the treasure chest, leading from the chest to the front door of the room. Each of the suits of armor had a 2-handed sword in front of them, with the hilt in their hands and the blade poking into the carpet. Marcus moved into the room and approached the treasure chest.
I wouldn't touch that if I were you.
Marcus stopped.
Who's there?
One of the empty suits of armor waved its hand at him. The empty eye slits of the helmet turned toward him. A slight chill danced up Marcus's spine. He looked identical to the other suits of armor, which was the point, he supposed.
Hi there.
The suit of armor said.
The name's Lars. You're the Minotaur who killed those guys, aren't you? I don't know what that was about, but I don't want any trouble.
Marcus held up a hand.
I don't want any trouble either. See, what happened? This guy named Brad and his friends were harassing this coworker named Karen, so I stepped in and stopped them from hurting her.
Karen? As in seek out Karen for a good time, Karen?
Marcus arched an eyebrow at him.
I wouldn't know about that.
Nor I. I saw the message scrawled on a bathroom stall. I felt bad for whoever Karen was. What's your name?
Marcus. You said Lars, right? Nice to meet you. What did you mean, by the way? You said don't touch that.
Lars pointed to the treasure chest.
Yeah, meet Jeb. He's a faker.
The treasure chest lid opened up and it actually smiled at Marcus. A dozen sharp teeth beamed, and then Jeb licked his lips with a green, slimy tongue. Jeb grinned once more before he went back to being a good little treasure chest.
Whoa, that's pretty sneaky.
Lars grinned.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe how many murder hobos fell for Jeb's disguise. So, what are you doing here?
I'm here to work with...
A loud alarm rang out, and both Marcus and Lars glanced toward the door.
Oh wow, we have some early birds today. Hey, I have an idea. Pretend to be asleep in that corner. If they come in, they might try to go for the treasure chest first, and then we can catch them off guard.
Marcus nodded and then quickly moved over to the far corner of the room. He positioned himself in the joint of the corner, placed his hands on his lap, but kept his eye open as a narrow slit. From a distance, one might be fooled. Lars took his spot, which was fourth in line from the left, and he stood extremely still. A deep silence lingered over the dungeon. Minutes passed. A loud crash echoed from somewhere. Perhaps the front door? More minutes passed, and the silence dug into Marcus's skin like needles. He kept his breathing calm, and even though the murder hobos were not quite there yet, he tried to emulate sleeping. Faint metal on metal started resounding, followed by screams, cries, and then silence. Both Lars and Jeb remained motionless, and they didn't exactly have facial expressions capable of showing anxiousness. Marcus, on the other hand, didn't have that luxury. He breathed out and then pushed the stress from his mind. This particular room was close to the entrance, which meant the screams must have come from the first chamber. It looked like someone was going to be raised. Faint sounds broke through the silence, and Marcus's muscles tensed a little. He started making little snoring noises, as if he were sleeping. 5 shadows darkened to the doorway to the room. He closed his eye, but kept ready just in case.
Hey, look, a treasure chest. Score! Today's our lucky day.
Wait. Look over there.
Seriously? I guess some monsters haven't woken up yet. It really is our lucky day. Hey, sneak over there and slit that cow's throat.
Cow! The urge to clench his jaw nearly overtook him. Beyond that, though, his stomachs started to twirl within him.
Screw that! Let sleeping minotaurs lie. Let's just sneak over, take the treasure, and then continue forth.
But it's an easy kill.
But what if he wakes up? Or what if he's faking? Look at that patch over his eye. He's obviously a scrapper. Do we want to risk it if he's actually super tough? He's all alone. He could be a boss.
Excuse me. How do you know it's a he? You're assuming gender.
Look at its chest. No boobs, no udders, or anything close to resembling mammary glands.
Who cares about its gender? Can you just fireball him or something?
And waste my fireballs? I only got so many spells a day.
Wow, these murder hobos sure talked a lot. Like, too much. A sense of foreboding anticipation started to tickle the deepest parts of his senses. Savage urgency twisted in him like a giant's fist. Would they just make up their minds?
Let's take a vote. Who says we should kill the Minotaur?
A brief silence lingered for a moment.
Okay, 2. And just sneaking in to get the treasure and leaving?
A brief moment passed before he said,
3. Okay, we're sneaking in.
I'll check for traps.
He opened his eye ever so slightly. There were 5 murder hobos, a rather large group, and they all stood around the first couple of empty knight armors. One of the murder hobos wore a set of leather armor and carried a pair of daggers in her hands. She examined the suits of armor while the others watched. Another hobo wore a vibrant, sparkling purple cloak and carried a wooden staff. The third hobo wore a metal chain-link shirt, a horned helmet, and she carried a battle axe. One of the hobos wore a silk shirt, some leather pants, and he carried a golden harp in his long, delicate fingers. The last hobo was an archer, and he wore forest green-colored armor and clothing. His weapon was a longbow, and he had a quiver on his back. After looking at the first pairs of armor, the rogue stood up.
These armors are junk. They're all ornamental. That treasure chest better have some worthwhile loot, or I'm going to stab that minotaur to work off my rage.
The mage raised his wooden staff.
Let me use one of my lower spells. And then let's be on our way.
A ring of magic expanded from the staff, and it even touched Marcus's body. A slight tingle draped over him like a sheet.
There are no traps in the room. Not even on the chest.
Sweet. I get first dibs.
As she moved closer to the chest, she pulled out a ring of lockpicks. The rogue leaned over the top of the chest and smiled. Suddenly, Jeb smiled back, opened his mouth, and then chomped down on the rogue's body.
Bernice! I'll save you!
Lars raised his sword and cleaved into the man who carried the harp. He had been facing away from Lars, and the poor bard never saw the blade coming. It split open his chest and the instrument in one foul swoop.
Ah! What if it was alive?
The warrior with the horned helmet raised her battle axe. The archer pointed at Marcus as he rose to his hooves.
I knew he was faking.
An arrow narrowly missed, clipping Marcus on his patch-sided face. He still ran forward. The archer started to pull another arrow from his quiver, but then hopped back to dodge Lars's black sword. Just as Marcus stepped up to the mage waved his hand in the Minotaur's face.
Dazzling display!
A white field dominated Marcus's vision. A moment later, 1,000 little balls, all different colors, swirled around him as if he were a brilliant sun surrounded by stars.
There! I'll try to save Bernice. Help Frida with that animated armor.
Marcus swung his fists, but only struck air. The sounds of metal clanging against metal thundered, and off to the side, a loud crunch joined in the din of the noise.
No! Damn it!
The field of white faded, and Marcus blinked a couple of times.
Oh shit, your spell wore off.
He pulled back the arrow and blasted it toward Marcus. Marcus shifted out of the way at the last moment, and he stepped up towards the archer. The archer had moved to the other side of the line of knights, while the mage still stared at the chest. Jeb munched animatedly, as happy as a harpy on a clear day. On the other side of the room, Lars and the warrior engaged in a swinging match. The warrior looked nervous, while Lars did not. Marcus dodged another arrow and then jumped back at the last moment as a fireball zoomed past him. The far end of the room became bathed in fiery light, and the purple carpet became blackened as a result. The mage had turned his back to Jeb, and he glared at Marcus.
You will pay for our friend's death, you vile...
He said other things, but Marcus's attention was on Jeb. The faker licked his lips and then hopped closer to the mage.
By the 7 stars of Magladar, that thing can move?
He started to back away, and then he ran as the faker took longer hops toward him. In his moment of distraction, an arrow dug into Marcus's body, 3 inches below the base of his throat. Marcus charged to the archer. When the archer rolled to the side, Marcus did the same. He tumbled with expert grace and then came to his hooves, right in front of the archer. The poor little murder hobo gazed up at Marcus, eyes radiating with disbelieving wonder. That wonder faded when Marcus chopped him in the spot where the shoulder and the neck met. The archer grunted before falling to a knee. Marcus's hoof smashed into the man's face, and his head slapped back against the carpet. He remained still and didn't even protest as Marcus picked him up by the front of his armor. Marcus positioned himself accordingly, and then hurled the archer with all of his might. A moment later, the archer's body slapped into the mage in mid-stride. They collapsed together in a heap. By the time the mage pulled himself from said heap, the faker's jaws were already closing in around his upper torso. A savage scream echoed out for only a moment before it became encapsulated in the confines of Jeb's mouth. A woman screamed out. Lars's 2-handed sword slid against the female hobo's stomach. She fell to the ground, and then she whimpered loudly. The whimpering stopped when Lars planted his sword in her cheek. Lars glanced over at Marcus.
So, you got something on your...
He gestured to Marcus's upper chest. Marcus winced, and he sighed.
Yeah. Would you mind?
Are you sure?
Yeah. Just do it.
Marcus turned his attention to Jeb, who had just finished the mage. Jeb's green tongue started to lick the archer's body. Lars grabbed the arrow with one hand, planted the other hand on Marcus's chest, and then yanked really hard. Massive pain surged through Marcus's senses, followed by a constant throbbing.
Thanks. That was fun. You're pretty good.
So are you. How are you doing, Jeb?
Jeb munched on what remained of the archer. It swallowed, burped loudly, and then started hopping toward the warrior.